Hello everyone, DM Gashbad here. Oh, it has been a long time. I apologize, but we are back and we are doing round 4 of our Warhammer Fantasy 8th edition escalation campaign. We are up to 750 points. We are playing the Bones to Pick scenario, which was created by one of our players in the group. In this scenario, basically, we've got 3 players in the campaign, and me and the Tomb Kings player are fighting right now, so that means the other player, the Goblin player, has chosen a unit from both of our sides that he has placed a bounty on. So we both get double victory points for eliminating that unit. We also get these prestige points, which we can spend on magic items in the last scenario of the campaign. Basically, we get some prestige points if we keep our own most hated unit, it's called. Basically, the unit that the other player has placed the bounty on. If we keep them alive, we get some prestige points, some bonuses for the end. Real quickly, here is the army that I will be using. I've got my level 2 Necromancer up in front, that's Ethrak Crowfather. He has the Ruby Ring of Ruin. For this round, I have rolled up the Invocation of Nehek and I believe Hellish Vigor. Standing next to him is Mr. Grimm, that is my Cairn Wraith. Behind him, we have the Dwellers Beyond. Those are 24 Crypt Ghouls with a Ghast. Over on the left, we have 11 Skeletons with Light Armor, Shield, a Champion, and a Musician. Those are my Doom Hunters. Behind them, we have the Stone Guardians. That is a unit of 3 Crypt Horrors. Over on the right, we have the Stygian Fairy. That is my Corpse Cart. And off to the right of him, we have Bunny and Kindling. Those are my Fellbats. Here's a quick photo of my opponent's force. We have 3 Tomb King chariots. Over on the left, I believe they have full command. We have a unit of 25 skeleton warriors with full command. Off on the right, we have 10 skeleton archers. That unit also has his Lich Priest. He is armed with the Ruby Ring of Ruin. He is level 2. And for his spells, he has got the Kassar's Incantation of the Desert Wind. That's the spell that lets his units move. And we have Petra's Incantation of Righteous Smiting. That's the one that gives them an extra attack. Buried beneath the battlefield, we also have a Tomb Scorpion and 4 Tomb Swarms. So here's a picture of the battlefield before we start. It looks like we rolled up 6 pieces of terrain and we got 4 forests. So that's them kind of cluttering up the center of the table there. We have an ordinary hill, which is in my deployment zone. We also got a blazing barricade. Now my opponent doesn't really like those kinds of things. Doesn't like terrain that his chariots have to make difficult terrain tests. My opponent decided that he really didn't want his chariots bouncing across barricades stretching across the middle of the table. So he chose to, when it was his turn to choose a piece of terrain, he grabbed those first and put them along the side of the board where they're not going to have any kind of impact on the battle. You can see my opponent's forces castled up in the upper left-hand corner. My forces are down below. I've got my Crypt Ghouls in the center, and Mr. Grimm, my Wraith, is in with those guys. The Skeletons are off to the right, and my Necromancer, the general of my army, is in with those guys. Horrors to the left, Bats to the right. Everybody's ready for fighting. So the Goblin player has decided on which of the units are his most hated units, the ones that have the bounty on them. For my opponent, it's his chariots. So if I polish off his chariots, he gets I get double victory points. For my army, it is the Skeletons. The Skeletons are an interesting choice. They are my bunker unit for my Necromancer. So if they leave, I've probably lost the battle because my Necromancer probably gets killed with them. On the other hand, they're not worth a lot of victory points, so again, it's sort of an interesting choice. I don't know what those Skeletons did to offend the Goblin player. They certainly haven't accomplished much in the course of this campaign, but who knows? Those Goblins are tricky people. So my opponent gets the first turn of the game, and so he takes the opportunity to just touch forward his group just a little bit. He's in no rush. He's got a shooting advantage on me. He's got as good a magic as I do, and he's also got his tunnelers, which are coming up. So he doesn't need to charge forward while he's at a numeric disadvantage, so he just moves up like that. I believe this picture is showing me that he is using his magic and his shooting to attack my Corpse Cart. The Corpse Cart has a 4-up regen, and I think he sails through without any significant damage. I don't think he takes any wounds at all. So it is my turn, and I'm feeling the opposite of how my opponent feels. I feel like I want to get into combat as soon as possible. I feel that the Tomb King's army is just doesn't hit as hard as the vampire counts, and so I want to move them in, force the issue, get into combat as quickly as possible before those tunnelers arrive. So the Crypt Horrors move up fast on the left, as does the Crypt Ghouls. The corpse cart and the skeletons also shuffle forward right as fast as they can, I am going to use my Fellbats. I'm going to hold those guys back for a little bit because they are vulnerable to the ruby ring that my opponent has and also his shooting, and they are kind of important. I'm probably going to need them at one point to either do a suicide charge, to pick off something vulnerable, or more likely just to get in the way of a counter charge or a charge of those chariots. So I'm keeping those out of range of his missile troops for the time being. My magic phase is completely shut down, and so we go on to my opponent's turn. So it's the second round, and so he gets to roll for his tunnelers. The tomb swarms manage to crop up, and they crop up exactly where he wants them, which is in front of my crypt horrors. My crypt horrors are a nasty unit, but those tomb swarms have what it takes to get rid of them. They have poisoned attacks, so they have a good shot of getting through that toughness 5 that those crypt horrors have. Just ridiculous. And so anyway, they have positioned themselves just to be in the way so that my horrors no longer threaten his chariots, and they are also pretty safe from my crypt ghouls, and yeah, it's just an inconvenient spot as far as I'm concerned. Thankfully, his tomb scorpion does not arrive. The rest of his troops, again, aren't really in a big rush to get into grips with my dudes. The chariots, again, they could have surged forward a little bit and really pressed the issue, but they decided not to take the chance. And so yeah, it's another cautious advance on the Tomb King part. In the magic phase, the Ruby Ring of Ruin manages to burn 3 ghouls to death, and the skeleton archers manage to pick off another one. So I don't love the position that I am, so unfortunately I do a lot of dithering this round, where I really want to just kind of drive my forces forward and get right in the face of these Tomb Kings. These Tomb Swarms have kind of left me in the lurch a little bit. I don't want to send my Crypt Ghouls out in the middle of his army unsupported, and I don't really want to charge those swarms right now. Because even if I win and I bust them all up, then I'm just going to eat a chariot charge in the next round. So what I do is a bunch of kind of fiddling around. I do kind of have a plan, but it's not great. So I back the horrors up away from those tomb swarms, and I pivot the crypt ghouls to kind of support them. The big thing is that I hop the Fellbats over onto the left. So I'm going to brave the fire, and the idea is that if he doesn't do anything significant with those swarms, if he just kind of keeps them there clogging up my forces, I'm going to charge with the horrors, maybe with the crypt ghouls, and I'm going to hop those Fellbats up over all those combats, and I'm going to get in the way of his chariots. I'm going to divert the chariots, and so hopefully the horrors will kill off all the swarms, and then he can't countercharge into them with the chariots. He'll have to spend a turn dealing with the Fellbats, and then in my next turn I just charge in with the crypt horrors. Anyway, that's the plan. So I figure a fight with the swarms is going to happen sooner rather than later, so I go ahead and I use my ruby ring on the tomb swarms, and I get it with irresistible force, which is nice in a way because I know the spell comes off, but then I lose the ruby ring. The ruby ring can't be used from now on, which isn't great. I do max out the damage, or at least close as possible, and I managed to kill off an entire swarm, so 5 wounds. I guess the max would have been 6, but still, that's really good. If this was an army other than Tomb Kings and these guys couldn't just regrow, I would have been even happier, but what can you do? So it's my opponent's turn, and yep, here comes the Tomb Scorpion. So the Tomb Scorpion pops up behind all my stuff, so that's not fantastic for me. He's absolutely threatening every unit in my army. So again, in the movement phase, my opponent is taking his time. He is not rushing into anything. He is just touching forward a little bit and just putting the pressure on my forces without exposing any vulnerabilities. And now that I have lost my Ruby Ring of Ruin, my ranged threat is all but gone. So he actually takes his Lich Priest and leaves the unit of Skeleton Archers, and he is hiding behind the unit of Skeleton Warriors, which means that he's safe from my Fellbats. They can't actually fit in there to attack him, and there's nothing that I have shooting wise that can threaten that guy, so he's in a real safe place. In the magic phase, it is his turn to get an irresistible force, Ruby Ring of Ruin, and he targets my Fellbats, because he knows what I'm going to do. I've done this before. So he's going to try and get rid of those guys as quick as humanly possible. So now his Ruby Ring is gone. Now, if I had my choice, I would have dispelled that, because I need those bats. They're critical to my plan right now, but he doesn't roll as well as he could have. He does pretty well on his damage. He manages to kill off 1 bat, which, I'll take that, but I need those guys to hang in there. Not pictured, he also gets his movement spell off on the swarms. He doesn't actually want to move those swarms. He's absolutely fine with where they are right now. What he does want to do is heal them. So he actually goes and heals back an entire swarm, and so one of those guys is coming back. But that brings us to the shooting phase. I don't believe the skeleton archers do anything, but the chariots open fire on the fellbat and manage to pick off the last 2 wounds. So there goes my fellbat, there goes my redirectors. Okay, we got to do this the hard way. It's looking rough. So it is my turn, and here is what I do. I don't really have much of a choice. I've got to send the horrors into the swarms. In they go. That's as many as they can contact, because of course those swarms are just kind of clipping my corner. I'm going to send the ghouls into the skeletons. I'm going to march the skeleton warriors up. I'm actually going to have, now that he's lost his ruby ring, and this isn't great for me because he still has missile troops, I'm going to have my necromancer leave the unit, and he's going to go into that forest, which turns out to be a dreadwood. Our units cause fear. Every unit in our army causes fear. It doesn't really make a difference. But this isn't as good for me as it is for him, because number one, I don't really have a safe place for me to hide like he does behind that big unit of skeleton warriors. Also, he still has shooting, so those skeleton archers could just take a turn and have a decent chance of just killing my guy straight off. So he's left the units. I've advanced the skeleton warriors to try and help out those ghouls because they are in a bad spot, and I've just sort of rumbled my corpse cart up up into the middle of the table. And so I kind of want to take a moment to appreciate what I've managed to do here, because this is about as bad of a situation as I put myself in a game of Warhammer Fantasy. I have just committed myself to a bunch of combats that I am not happy with. I do not like the horrors versus the tomb swarms. I am not terribly confident about the ghouls and the skeleton warriors. I think they'll win that eventually, but I think it'll take them a long time, and I'm worried about what happens. Meanwhile, my necromancer is just exposed in a number of ways. Number one, there's that tomb scorpion. It's a long charge, but he can make it. He's safe from the archers charging him, but they can certainly shoot at him. The chariots, same thing. And then those chariots and those archers, yeah, so the archers can shoot at my necromancer, which is great. They can flank my ghouls, which is also not bad for him. And same thing with the chariots. The chariots can go in, they can risk the dangerous terrain and flank my ghouls, which would probably spell the end of my ghouls. They can go in and tip the balance, that horror combat. So my opponent, and of course there's the tomb scorpion, he can polish off the crypt horrors, he can polish off the corpse cart. Yeah, he's got a ton of options, like all of them good, and meanwhile I'm just kind of desperately hoping that something breaks my way in a big way in this close combat phase, but I'm not exactly sure what that would be. So this certainly helps. I'm going to start off with the Crypt Horrors versus the Tomb Swarms, and the Crypt Horrors just do phenomenally. They cause 6 wounds to the Swarms, which means they're going to take another 6 wounds in crumbling, because they do manage to punch just 1 wound into my Crypt Horrors. So they had a really good round of combat. Now, of course, those Swarms are still there. They're not, I wasn't able to bust through them or anything like that, and so those Horrors are definitely still in trouble, but they put up a good fight so far. The Crypt Ghouls did not do so great. I didn't get any of my magic off in the magic phase, so it looks like they managed to kill 3 skeletons and then lost 1 of their own in return. The skeletons have full command, so I'm actually going to lose another ghoul from crumbling, so I don't love the way that combat is shaping up. So it is my opponent's turn, and he has decided on what his charges are going to be. Number 1, the chariots are going to go and try and finish off those horrors. They're going to help out the swarms. And so in they go. That's an easy charge. He has decided, now that swarm, that Tomb Scorpion just has a ton of options. He has decided to get rid of that corpse cart. So he has charged that thing in the back. Even if he doesn't cause any wounds, this thing's going to get badly hurt just through combat resolution. So I think if he does like 1 wound, the corpse cart is going away. And he takes his skeleton archers and he charges into the flank of the crypt ghouls. This might be okay, because this gives me more bodies to kill with my ghouls, and I certainly prefer this to him shooting down my necromancer. My opponent may be he might actually be trying to give me a break here. I don't really know, but we'll see if my ghouls and Mr. Grimm can fight their way out of this. Fortunately, my opponent doesn't get any magic off of any significance in the magic phase, so we go on to hand-to-hand combat. And again, my Crypt Horrors are actually doing pretty well. They are going to take 2 wounds from the chariots and the swarms, so down goes one of my Crypt Horrors. But the swarms are going to take 4 wounds from the remaining Crypt Horrors, swinging on them and stomping on them, that kind of thing. And I got 1 more chariot that I can punch, and they're going to take 1 wound. So the swarms and the chariot actually crumble 1 more, and yeah, that combat went a lot better than I thought it would. Unfortunately, the Tomb Scorpion versus Corpse Cart combat went exactly as well as I thought it would. The Tomb Scorpion didn't take a single wound, and it snip, polished off my Corpse Cart with absolutely no problem, and reformed to look menacingly at both my skeletons and my Necromancer, and even my ghouls if he feels like that, if he's hungry for ghoul tonight. And there's a lot of carnage in this combat in the center. So the ghouls are doing okay. They kill off 4 of the skeleton archers off to their flank. They kill off another 4 skeleton warriors to the front of them. They do lose, between the attacks and the crumbling, they do lose a total of 9 ghouls. So that unit is badly hurt. They're still hanging in there, but not by much. Those skeletons are not going away in any big hurry. So it is my turn, and I don't have a lot of units left to move. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take my skeleton warriors, and I'm going to charge the flank of his skeleton archers. Don't really have a choice. Got to help out someone where I can, and these guys are the solution that I got. My Necromancer is in Operation Avoid the Tomb Scorpion, so he is just trying to skirt his way around this big combat, trying to stay out of the charge arc of, or the charge path of that Tomb Scorpion. But I get some good news in the magic phase. This is nice. I have to go for the max power invocation of Nehek, but I managed to get it off. So the Crypt horrors go back to full strength, which has got to be disappointing for any opponent, and I do heal back 4 ghouls from the unit in the center. So that is going to help a lot. Maybe these guys are going to be able to fight their way out of this. The Tomb Horrors are still doing the job over here. They are going to take 1 wound, but in return, they are going to cause 2 wounds to the Swarm, which is going to finish that off. They're going to cause another wound onto the Chariots. So the Chariots are going to crumble 1 more. They're going to lose 1 of the Chariots, and I think that means that 1 of them is wounded right now. So the Horrors are doing okay. And the big grind in the center just kind of keeps going on. I'm going to lose 2 ghouls. He, all told, is going to lose 3 skeleton archers and 3 skeleton warriors. So this might be shifting in my favor. I'm not really sure. Listen, it's all gonna come down to what my opponent can do in his magic phase and where that Tomb Scorpion goes. So it is my opponent's phase. Here come the Tomb Kings, and he has decided that, here's the thing, so I charged those skeleton warriors into the side of the skeleton archers. The thing is, they were a little bit too successful. They actually ground down that skeleton archer unit to the point where they had to move up in order to remain in contact. Those guys moving up meant that my Necromancer was again exposed, and so he was a valid charge target. But I get really lucky, and the Tomb Scorpion fails his charge. So not only does my Necromancer sort of get away with it in this round, but also that Tomb Scorpion doesn't go into any of the other units that could completely tip the balance. So that's a huge sigh of relief on that right there. So it looks like I also get lucky in the magic phase in that I'm able to shut down his magic, or he doesn't manage to cast or something like that. It doesn't look like anything useful happened as far as magic went. So we go on to the close combat phase, and we go to the Chariots versus the Horrors, and the Horrors start to get really tired. The Chariots cause 1 wound to them. The Horrors, just completely bomb their rolls and don't manage to cause any wounds to the Chariots, which means that they're going to crumble 2 more. There goes one of my Horrors down again, and one of my Horrors remains wounded. So that was disappointing. But the ghouls, to a certain extent, are picking up the slack. So between the skeletons and the ghouls, we polish off all the skeleton archers, which is nice. Those guys aren't going to come back. We are also going to kill off 4 more of the skeleton warriors on his side. So now I can do a combat reform. I'm going to expand frontage on the ghouls. These skeleton warriors are just taking forever to finish off, but, and I'm running out of ghouls a little bit. So we'll see how this goes. I'm going to get more attacks into the fight. I do have Mr. Grimm there. He's swinging his Sith. He's helping out, but it's just slow going. So it is my turn, and things aren't going as badly as I thought they would. I still have a number of problems. Number 1 is that Tomb Scorpion. So I do something which maybe is not brilliant. So I've got this idea. I want to protect the ghouls. I want to protect my Necromancer. So the Necromancer is going to skirt around the other side of that combat. I'm not particularly threatened by his Lich Priest. If we were thinking about that, we totally should have, made sure our facings allowed us to charge each other in the end rounds of this game. But neither of us were really particularly paying attention to that. We're just trying to keep alive. And so anyway, I move my Necromancer around. I'm going to tuck myself behind his skeleton warriors, and that's going to do a couple of things. First, it's going to keep my Necromancer safe from his troops. The second thing is, by me sitting there, I am preventing him from raising more of those skeleton warriors. Or at least not, he can't raise too many of them because he can't come within an inch of my guys. The other thing that I do is I take my skeleton warriors and I reform them in a big line. So I am screening my ghouls from that tomb scorpion so he can't rush in there and, I lose all my ghouls in a round of combat. But I make a series of mistakes. Number one, I do to myself exactly what I'm doing to my opponent. With those skeletons right behind my ghouls, I can't raise those guys back, or at least, yeah, there's just no room for me to get more of those guys. Also, I've completely forgotten that those skeleton warriors are my opponent's most hated unit. So if that tomb scorpion goes in there and manages to eat all those, he gets double victory points. So at the time I thought I was saving a bunch of victory points by doing this maneuver, and you never know, maybe I was, but in retrospect, I probably would have been better off doing something else, possibly anything else. So it's my turn to not have any of my magic happen in my magic phase, so we go straight on to the hand-to-hand combat phase. The horrors manage to cause one more wound to the chariot, which is still a little, it's kind of underperforming. The chariot manages to cause another one, and also they're going to make me crumble one because they have a standard. So I lose another crypt horror, and that's not going well at all. But the good news is that the expanded frontage of the ghouls does do the trick, and we kill off the remaining skeleton warriors and we turn left. We can't really do any fancy maneuvers because, again, those skeletons are in the way. I'm limited to how I can reform these guys. So they just do an about face and they're looking that direction because that's where his Lich Priest is, and I would like to go hunt him down if I can. So it is my opponent's turn 6. It is his last round of the game, and he is showing some guts. So the Tomb Scorpion goes into my Skeleton Warriors, just makes that charge right in there. Not only that, his Lich Priest goes and, what a brave guy, he charges the rear of my Skeleton unit. So this is a really bold move. I mean, on the one hand, he's getting a rear charge, which is adding 2 combat resolution. He also has his magic and all that kind of thing. But anyway, he's got a shot of destroying these skeletons and overrunning out of my ghoul's line of sight. On the other hand, this could go really badly for him because it wouldn't take a whole lot of luck for, say, my skeletons to just chop him down as he came in. And of course, if he doesn't manage to kill off all my skeletons, he's going to eat a ghoul and wraith charge in the flank, which is definitely going to end that guy. So nonetheless, it is a really brave move on his part. However, we go to the magic phase, and he goes and casts probably the Righteous Smiting incantation, and he irresistible forces it. My opponent has actually irresistible forced 4 spells so far in this game. One was the Ruby Ring of Ruin, 2 more just kind of happened here and there. He took really no negative effects from any of these miscasts. He lost the Ruby Ring, but otherwise it was like the end of the round, and he lost like some magic dice, but he didn't have any magic dice to lose or that kind of thing. So this is his 4th irresistible force of the game, but this time he actually explodes. But I think it's still probably to his benefit, because first off, he kills 3 of my skeletons, which means that he's that much closer to wiping out that unit and moving to safety. And he does blow up 2 ghouls in that nearby unit. But I think that miscast ended up helping him more than hurting him. And yeah, I think it tipped the balance. So the Scorpion and the Hierophant, the Lich Priest, kill off enough skeletons to wipe out the unit. My 1 skeleton attacking the Lich Priest doesn't manage to kill him. And so the Lich Priest gets to overrun to safety, and the Tomb Scorpion gets to overrun straight into my ghouls. The flank of the ghouls, no less. I'm probably going to be okay, but I'm certainly not thrilled. And over on the left, the horror chariot combat goes nowhere. These guys, they had such a strong start and then just kind of ran out of gas. So no wounds were caused by either of our units. My horror is going to crumble 1. This game is kind of on a knife's edge. I really want that unit to survive. And of course, earlier I would have said I really want those chariots to die because those are the bounty unit, and I would have gotten double victory points for them. But now it's just like, now I just want that horror to live through this. I've kind of given up on actually killing off those chariots. So it is my turn. It is the last round of the game. There's really not anything to do. We go straight into the close combat phase. No spells manage to be cast. Anyway, the Scorpion only manages to kill 1 ghoul, so that unit is going to be alive. The Scorpion survives, so all those guys are still alive at the end of the game. Also, the Horrors and the Chariots, they manage to fluff their attacks yet again, so neither of those units gets polished off. So yeah, that is the end. That It was a draw. It was within 100 victory points, both of our totals. It was a really close game. I have to admit, I feel like I messed up that game a lot. I managed to stick my troops through indecision and that kind of thing. I just left my units in about a bad position as I possibly could have. I am thrilled to walk away with a draw. But poor Tomb Kings player, I mean, he had all the things that he needed to win, and it just didn't come up for him. Chariots obviously underperformed. That Tomb Scorpion failing the charge on my Necromancer, just... And of course my magic phases continued to be, to get results where his didn't so much. So through no skill of my own, I do claw a draw out of this. So my guys are still doing pretty well as we move into round 5 of this campaign. But again, it was a really fun game. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, go ahead and leave them in the comment section below, and I will see you on the next one.